Hey everybody, welcome to the Big Idea and our Press and Play Listen for a Minute giveaway. The word of the week is dadgrads. Go to drgadget.com, that's drgadget.com. Enter dadgrads for your chance to win the iHome Dads and Grads bundle. We're including one iHome PlayTough X portable Bluetooth speaker with powerful sound. It has an 18-hour rechargeable mega battery, active driver, a passive subwoofer, and it's water resistant. We're also going to include one iHome Power Glide Deep Tissue Percussion Massager Pro Series for fast self-care recovery. With 4 heads, rechargeable battery, and 5-time variable speeds, the Power Glide allows you to increase your blood flow, decrease that muscle soreness and stiffness with a faster recovery, and a better range of motion to 2,600 strokes per minute. So let's live life boldly with iHome. So I'm super excited today to have, oh my gosh, an award-winning actor, Broadway star, comedian, Dancing with the Star. I think he was a champion, entrepreneur, philanthropist, one of the most recognized TV personalities, in my opinion, in the world, known for the portrayal of J. Peterman on Seinfeld, 6th host of game show Family Feud, which is awful. Well, we're going to talk about all this stuff, everybody. And what it took to get there. And I think everybody's favorite, millions and millions of people, the National Dog Show. John O'Hurley, welcome.
Thank you.
So you grew up in Maine.
Well, I was actually born in Maine. Yes, I was born in Kittery, Maine, which was is the first town as you come over the border. And for many years, it was the city that was the symbol of man's struggle against the sea, where fishermen would go out every day and hopefully come back with their catch and their lives to their families. And today, 200 years later, it's the largest shopping outlet center in America.
Who'd ever thought, right?
Not such a surrender of the primitive.
Now you eventually moved. Well, your family moved to Philadelphia.
No. We moved. Most of our lives was in Connecticut.
Oh, it was in Connecticut. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm ahead of myself because there was a step there. One of the questions that I had was, with your father being an ear, nose, and throat surgeon, was there a moment when you were younger that you thought, oh my gosh, I want to grow up and, do that for a living? Or did...
Oh, no. My first science class took care of that dream right away. I was never any sort of a student that could have handled the sciences of any sort. No, I knew from the age of 3 what I wanted to do with my life. People
Really?
would, in fact, I talk about the idea that back when I was 3, my earliest memories were of very large people standing over me, and they were all asking me the same question: what do you want to be when you grow up? And at the time, I'm still soiling diapers at the rate of about 6 a day, and I don't know that I had a concrete career objective, but I finally answered that by putting my hands on my hips in a sense of disgust that only a 3-year-old can muster. And I would point to the television in the corner of the room, the black and white TV, and I would say, well, I am an actor, so that's what I'm going to be. And it wasn't that I wanted to be an actor. I said I was an actor. So there was something different. There was a connect for me when I watched television, and I knew I was supposed to be there. And so for me, just growing up was about connecting those dots. I just knew I was going to be an actor, and that was it. And people would say, well, what's where are you going? I was always wherever an actor goes. So for me, it was just all about performance and entertainment.
The TV was kind of the igniter for those feelings. What was your first, theater moment where you thought, okay, I better go into theater. I better go into this because this is the stepping stone for television?
The first theater moment was in 1st grade when they were casting roles for that epic British musical production of that popular nursery rhyme, um, what was it called? The one about 420 blackbirds baked in a pie. When the pie was opened, the birds began to sing. Wasn't that a tasty dish to set before the king? Come on, fill in the name of this for me.
Oh my gosh.
And, you remember it?
The blank draws the additional blank, right?
Anyway, that was my first one. And I do remember, what I remember was that I ended up as one of the flowers in the royal garden. That was my first
I
role.
love it.
I had no speaking role. I wasn't the king. I wasn't the queen. I wasn't the 420 blackbirds. That's what it was. 420 blackbirds baked in a pie. When the pie was opened, the birds began to sing. Wasn't that a tasty dish to set before the king? The king was in the garden. Anyway, so I was in the garden, and I was a little marigold. But I was the damn proudest marigold you have ever seen, and that was my initial role. And I was a little upset that I was not cast in one of the speaking roles. However, this was a good lesson in life, was that all of the speaking roles went to the kids who were in the first reading group in first grade. Remember that group, the select group of those who read better? And that wasn't me. I was back in the meatier part of the bell curve there. Plus, I was I was left-handed, so I couldn't even decide which side of the page to start reading from. So anyway, it taught me the fact that the world didn't owe me my dream. I was going to have to develop a thicker skin if I was going to continue in the world of entertainment and claim that I was an actor. And so it was that was a good lesson for me.
So you went from the flower to high school.
Not right to Broadway. Not right to Broadway.
No. Well, there was a couple steps.
I was always
in between, right?
I was always, I always was doing plays in the basement for my parents, and if I could put together a talent show in junior high school, I would. But here's the problem: I had an inordinate amount of stage fright.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think it was because it meant too much to me. I just assumed everybody was so much better than I was, especially when I got into high school, and we actually had, I went to a prep school where we had some kids that were really decent actors. And I was just, I'd look at that and go, oh my God, I'm not that good. And it wasn't really until an English teacher pulled me aside one day after we read a play in class, and he particularly liked my characterization, and he recommended I go down and talk to the head of the theater program there, and actually made a call on my behalf, and the rest was history. I got the lead actually in the next play, and pretty much that was it. And all the way through high school, and then went to college. I majored in theater in college, but unfortunately, I chose a school that. I was the only theater major. In fact, I graduated my senior year as the only theater major. So consequently, I won the theater award. No,
I
my
would
school
never
was,
think that Providence College, just the sound of it, didn't have a theater program, because
it really was. It was on its beginning threshold there. And, oddly enough, to this day, I have spent a lot of time I was on the board of trustees for many, many years at Providence College. And I helped build the actual theater there, which I will tell you is probably one of the best in the country. They have a wonderful, to this date, they have a wonderful music theater arts program. They have a wonderful stage. They have a great film program. So it all kind of, at least I was able to turn around and give something back and develop something that was brand new. But to this date, it's a school that I'm still very, very closely attached to.
When you transitioned out of, what a great first moment to that transition. And where was the next big idea at, from the standpoint, okay, now I've got this degree, and how do you pursue this goal? Because there's a big leap from there to 2007 when you're in Vegas, playing Spam-A-Lot, right?
Yeah. You think that's a big leap? I'll tell you what, it's a leap. Yeah, it was. Biggest leap of my life, and I got scared to death, and I froze like a deer in the headlights. My senior year in college, I knew what I was doing. I knew what I was. I thought I was a good actor. I felt I really had a good handle on my skill set. I just didn't know how to make a living at it, and I got scared to death of the business of acting because I knew the show business. I just didn't know the business show, and it is business show, and don't make any mistakes about it. So for me, going to New York was too far of a dream, and I couldn't do it. And I went back home instead and went and lived in my parents' basement, and like many kids do, and went into the next most theatrical thing I could think of, which was public relations and advertising. And I went into that for about 6 years, and from age 21 to about 27. And it was the most difficult years of my life. And it wasn't that I wasn't doing well. I was running up that ladder of public relations and advertising very quickly. It was something that came very easily to me. But I knew I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. I knew I was supposed to be an actor. And I had instead taken a right-hand turn. And it was some of the darkest, dreariest days of my life because I had to wake up every morning and look myself in the mirror and somehow protect the lie. And that was a very difficult time for me. It wasn't really until a very interesting, a very sad tragedy. I lost my best friend in an automobile accident when I was about 26. And I was a guy that was living extraordinarily without even knowing what that notion ever meant. But it was his death that made me feel that I was not doing what I was supposed to be doing, and he was, and unfortunately didn't get a chance to take out his career path, which was to be a doctor. So I made a promise to myself that I was going to be in New York 1 year to that date, the date of his funeral. And sure enough, I kept that promise and spent all that time studying, restudying, actually. And by early September in 1981, my parents dropped me off with my only two suitcases, about $800 in my pocket, and at a single room occupancy hotel in New York City.
Oh, wow.
I had a bed, a quarter of which was missing, as though somebody had taken a bite out of it. I had roaches in my room. I had a bathroom nobody would dare go into, never mind shower at. But that was my place. And I got my first show 48 hours after I arrived in New York and never looked back.
How many of you have actually been thinking about a backyard makeover? Do you wish you had room for a pool? Well, you're going to love this idea, and your family and friends, they're going to love it too. Get a Michael Phelps Swim Spa by Master Spas. A Michael Phelps Swim Spa combines the benefits of a pool with the therapy of a hot tub. It comes in a variety of sizes to complement almost any yard, even if it's a small backyard. Michael Phelps Swim Spas by Master Spas have a water current so you can swim, do aquatic exercises, and have fun with the kids. This will reinvent family time. The water buoyancy will relieve pressure on aching joints, and you can enjoy pure relaxation in the massage therapy seats of the swim spa. And since it's heated, you can use it year-round in any climate. Michael Phelps Swim Spas are 100% made in the USA by Master Spas, the world's largest swim spa manufacturer. You're going to love your Michael Phelps Swim Spa by Master Spas. Go to masterspas.com, put in the promo code BIGIDEA to save $1,000 on a Michael Phelps Swim Spa or $500 on a Master Spas hot tub. That's masterspas.com, promo code BIGIDEA. What was that first show?
The worst musical ever done in New York City on Broadway. And it was
don't
called
get me wrong, I'm glad you didn't take ownership to what you had consumed as a PR person, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, your first gig was a Super Bowl commercial. It was
the worst musical ever done, but it was all right. It got me everything. It was called Eternal Love, and it was 3 hours long without a laugh. And it was a medieval musical about the love story of the historical lovers Abelard and Eloise back in the 12th century. So I know
Mhm.
you probably are just thinking to yourself, well, it's about time they did a musical on those two crazy kids.
Oh,
But
just what I was,
yes,
yeah.
yes, exactly. So it was terrible. But, it got me everything I needed. It got me into the union. I got an agent out of it. I came out smelling pretty good. And I tell you, as I looked back, that half look over my shoulder at my career at that point, which was only like 6 weeks old, I realized that all of that time that I spent in advertising and public relations helped me immeasurably because I instinctively knew how to leverage myself in that business. And so I had a leg up on the competition. Other kids had no idea what to do or how to make a business of their careers. I did. And it was all thanks to that time that I spent. So there is never time wasted. It's always, time applied. And for me, it was a very, very important time. And I ran up the flagpole really quickly because I was able to leverage one job into another and, find more people. And the more people I met, the more people I met, and the more people I met. And it was.
I think that's a strategic move from what I know. Actually, from what I know of you, to also you're very brilliant at recognizing those opportunities that are in front of you. And
Well, I
I
didn't go into
think
that. Listen, let's be blunt. I didn't go into this business. I went on the shoulders of a friend who had died. So I went into this business pretty seriously. I didn't go in to fail. And
right.
I knew what I was going to do, but I also knew the consequences of it. That I was going to be the best damn actor I possibly could be, and so there was no excuses. I had no excuses, and I did not go there to fail. I went there to succeed.
So
And
on the heels of that decision, which is remarkable, that was a motivational piece, which is obviously a blessing. But did you think this is a strategic move for me in theater because it's going to get me where I got to go? Did you have knowledge of that, or you just said boom? Because I think a lot of people make strategic moves. I'm just kind of curious if that was one for you. We know why you did it, but
yeah, it was for me. I had the notion that if I as long as I was a working actor, and for that, and for me, that meant even at the repertory companies around the all of the great resident theater programs around the country, certainly with an idea of wanting to be on Broadway. Television never really entered into it. It was really always about theater. I didn't know much about television. I had a friend who was on a soap opera. And I thought that was fascinating because I said,
yeah,
wow, look at, and I would watch him on the soap operas and I go, well, I know I can do that. But it's like, wow, television was foreign to me. So it was always about theater. So the first part of my career was theater and actually early opera as well. I started off there. I did a couple of things in New York. But television came on as a slow, seductive mistress a couple of years into my stay in New York, and it came via daytime television.
but getting back to the Broadway part, when you picked up in 2007 when you were we talked about it briefly, as I remember when that came out with when in the Spam-A-Lot and you playing King Arthur, it was like, oh my gosh, what a perfect role for John O'Hurley. I didn't even know you then, but I just remember thinking that
There were, at the time, there were two great roles hanging around out there, and I was able to wrap my arms around both of them. One was King Arthur in Spamalot, and it certainly did because he was kind of an extension of J. Peterman, just about 1,000 years removed. They were both raving lunatics, but then also the other musical was something of a different feel, but no less important, and that was Billy Flynn in the Broadway musical Chicago.
Chicago, yeah.
And I've done probably 2,000 performances of that all around the country, and in addition to many, many years on Broadway with it. It's the longest running musical in theater history right now, in 25 years, 25 plus. But again, they were just those. I was just lucky enough to embrace and put my fingers through the loops of belt loops of two great brands, Spamalot and Chicago, and two completely different roles. I mean, Billy is as knowledgeable and elegant in his tuxedo, and I would dress up every night looking like the maitre d' at Fleming's Steakhouse and go out there and beat my steps against the stage. It was a lot of fun, yeah, and I still continue with it.
I love that character because my daughter, who majored theater at San Francisco State, was the actual stage manager at the Berkeley Theater, and that was one of her big hits that she had, and I watched her do that, and that character is, oh my God, just a lot of magnetism and stuff, but it resonates. What I like about these kind of conversations, because you can relate. Now, appearingly, you've always had an amazing command for the English language and your voice. And I want to talk about your voiceover career because, between being a guest speaker, all the things that you do, your voice is a star. I mean, that comes into it. I don't think a lot of people really realize your voiceover. I mean, I think a lot of people do, but I don't think a lot of people realize that you lent your voice to some amazing characters like, SpongeBob SquarePants. I didn't know that till I started preparing, right? And I thought, damn, my daughter grew up telling you that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm King Neptune on SpongeBob, and now that series has morphed off into Patrick is now his own show. So King Neptune, I just did the opening episode of Patrick on that. So that show will continue in both forms. The character, and then other ones as well, Phineas and Ferb, Bugs Bunny, and the Family Guy, the cult leader on Family Guy, and
Yeah,
there's a lot of other. I do
the Coors Light commercial. Do you remember? Why am I asking this? Of course you remember the Coors Light.
I remember the check.
Yeah, I'll bet you remember. Yeah, but do you remember the lines on that?
On Coors Light, not really,
Okay.
no. But I did it for about 10 years.
It was at least 10 years. Yeah.
No. Yeah, I not. But it was just those were. I got to say, I mean, that was just that was quite a time. Those are pretty darn lucrative. And actually, I'll tell you a funny side story. Was while I was doing that, I got a call from my agent at William Morris saying, "We have a beer campaign for you." Now, what I didn't realize is that they never went back to check the contracts that I already had, because it was just a renewal every year for Coors Light, renewal. They never thought about it. So this company called Dos Equis came to me with a campaign for the most interesting man in the world. And they said they kind of scribed it around you. And so so what do you say? And I said, well, that's really lovely. Tell them thank you very much. But I am otherwise engaged, and I don't think Coors will let me out to engage and promote another beer.
Oh, so that could have been you.
Well, there was. I mean, they had really kind of written for me in hand. However, that being said, I have always kept in the back pocket, because that was such an interesting campaign. I have kept the moniker of the seventh most interesting man in the world. And if you look at anything that I do, I always introduce myself as the seventh most interesting man in the world, because because I know that only 6 people are having a better day than I am.
Yeah, I love it because I never knew, obviously, till this moment, that story, which is really cool. Let's talk about the annual Philadelphia Dog Show, 2002. That seems to be a fun and sophisticated role. How you all are, you guys are formal, but yet you're having fun. And I really love the way the bar has been raised with the Purina commercials and the integrity of the dogs, and the communication skills and what happened. One of the ones that pops out to me is a little park bench where you're talking about communication, and I forgot what you said, but it was just something like, a bone coming back is a thank you or something like that, And I just love that because that's an elevation of what's been running for so long. And people just are so adaptive to that. Almost feel like it's a character. I know it's not. I know it's you. But it's just super cool.
Well, the dog show has been one of the great gifts to me, passed on from whoever is in charge of doing that upstairs. I do believe in a higher power, and I'm not afraid to admit it. But I think those are wonderful moments that happen to you out of nowhere, and it underscores what is genuinely extraordinary about this business, and that is that one phone call changes your life. And I've had a bunch of phone calls in my life like that. I'll tell you, it started with the fact that John Miller, who was the head of NBC Sports, took the movie Best in Show home with him one weekend. Very funny show, which it has lived out many, many lifetimes of popularity. And he watched it over the weekend, and he said, I think I know what we're going to do in between that space on Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade and football. He said, we got a 2-hour slot where we're showing reruns of It's a Wonderful Life, and we're getting, like not even 500,000 people, or I mean like a 0.5. So he says, we're going to do a dog show. He comes in on Monday morning and presents that to the morning meeting there at NBC Sports. Well, they about laugh him out of the office. But he went on that day, found Purina as a sponsor, got the Kennel Club of Philadelphia to tag one of their shows as the National Dog Show, called me on Tuesday morning. I pick up the phone in LA and I said, hello. And he says, woof, woof. And that was the beginning. That's how it all started. And he told me what his plans were. And I said, I always believe that opportunity is the only means that you can accentuate and accelerate your imagination. And I said, I followed my imagination all my creative life. I said, I'm not going to stop now, even though this seems to be such a left-hand turn. I said, but I'm going to say yes.
What a big idea. I mean, speaking of, what a big idea that he had.
Well, if it wasn't going to be me, it was going to be somebody else. And
right.
I mean, this is something that our first showing of the National Dog Show back in 2002, almost 20 million people watched the first show. And that was, I mean, if you imagine that they were doing a 0.5 before that with It's a Wonderful Life, you can imagine how John Miller at NBC Sports looked like. I'm surprised they didn't do the parade in his honor.
He saw it as a sport. Yeah, I mean, he saw it as a sport content, right?
Well, it's interesting, but if you talk to the people in the dog show world, they refer to dog shows as their sport. And it is, there's a certain, it doesn't have the exhaustion or the aerobic attributes of some other sports, but there is there's obviously a skill set to it.
Yeah, it's an incredible vision. And
it is, and it's wonderful. And to this day right now, we started off with 165 breeds that we started with in the AKC registration. We're up over 200 breeds right now. Our show has grown amidst a world of television difficulties in terms of garnering audiences anymore. I mean, the pie is split in so many different pieces that you can't believe that a show like the National Dog Show gets 32 million people every year watching it. Now, those were Seinfeld numbers back in the day. But no show gets that. You can put even, you have to go back to you'd have to put the entire Olympics together to find 32 million people watching a show. But every year, the dog show gets 32, and it's like clockwork. People are just addicted to it now. It's part of a family tradition. It's
So
you
it's
cook
a
the
great
turkey.
way to enjoy the
You cook
holiday.
the turkey. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly right. Well,
absolutely.
and what a joy! And what a joy it is to be part of some of that. It's just there's nothing about it that is bad. I go to Philadelphia, and because it's a benched show, which means the dogs, the owners, the handlers, everybody has to remain backstage during the day. There's 30,000 people there in the arena, and not just the dogs you see there on television. Um, it is just mayhem backstage with all of these dogs, because remember, for every breed, and there was probably 30 to 60 dogs of that breed that competed just to be the winner of the breed before they get to go to the group competition, before they get to go to the best in show competition. So you can imagine the people, the dogs are all there. And it is,
It's quite a business, actually, too, when you look at the championship breed,
yes,
and
yeah,
winner of, the perceived value of that is.
no. Well, it's nowhere near like it is at Churchill Downs and the Kentucky Derby. Is there something to it that you have championship stock? Yes, but it's on a much smaller scale. It's about the love of our relationship with our dogs, and
Right.
and these are the dogs that, they don't know they're champions. They sit on the couch and they drink out of the toilet. It's like it's the same. We just they don't know. It's like, well, I don't know. They go to the dog show, and it's just like, oh, some good smells here, and they know that it's an elevated adrenaline experience for them, and they all enjoy that, and they're beautiful specimens of their breed. But they're just the dogs that we love every day, and they sleep in our beds and tear up our slippers.
Warm water, massaging jets, backyard convenience. The relaxing hot tub experience you've been dreaming of could be just a click away. We're giving away a Master Spa's premium hot tub. Energy efficient, innovative design, and made in the USA. Go to masterspas.com/big idea for a chance to win a Master Spas hot tub. Again, go to masterspas.com/big idea for your opportunity to live life the better way.
He gave me a book on art forgery. I found myself drawn to these old masters. How did these artists take paint from a palette, arrange it on a canvas? I began to unlock the secrets. I was a storehouse of knowledge of how to create an illusion, present it to a experienced expert, manipulate his mind, and convince him and bring him to the inevitable conclusion that the painting is genuine. We flooded the market with my paintings, and I couldn't believe what I did. I couldn't believe it. Then the dominoes started falling, and eventually the FBI were led to my door. They uncovered a mountain of evidence against me.
But they never actually got you. At this point, you've sold a lot. You've got like $1 million in cash. You sold one painting for $717,000. Why did it go away? Why did you never get indicted? And how are we having this conversation?
I guess that's the greatest story of all.
To hear how Ken Perenni made millions in art forgery, dodged the mafia and the FBI, subscribe to The Jordan Harbinger Show and check out episode 282 in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening now.
So let's give some love to Seinfeld. Probably one of the most iconic roles recognized. I mean, not just the show, but how did it happen for you? How did Seinfeld happen for you?
Well, it was another interesting moment where one thing closed and another one opened. I had a sitcom on ABC called A Whole New Ball Game, and we were on for the better part of a season, attached to the producers and the show Coach. If you remember back in '94, and we were supposed to follow them, and it was a very, very funny show. One of the funniest casts I've ever been with, next to Seinfeld, and fabulous writing. but we just never found our slot. And they kept moving coach around, so consequently, we kept getting moved around and never really developed an audience. So, long story short, I get a call on Wednesday morning saying, "Don't bother coming to work today for the table read. The show has been canceled." And that's the way things happen in entertainment. So I said, "All right, well." So it goes. And so I went out to dinner that night with my manager, crying in my beer, trying to take the cancellation as personally as I possibly could. And
Of course.
and Larry David's office had called. And so they said, "We have this role. It's a guest star on Seinfeld. We know John's show has gotten canceled, but is he? We have this opportunity here. So is he interested? It's a fun role. He'll hit it out of the park." And so here, you know what I said? I said, "No, that's very sweet of you." I said, "But my show just got canceled. I'm still licking my wounds. Anyway," I said, "Tell him no, but thank you." Well, my manager never called him back.
Really?
The following
What a
morning,
great guy.
the following morning, he called me very early in the morning. He says, "All right, I didn't call him back. Get out of bed, go over there, have some fun, blow it out of your system." And I always have one theory in life, and that is you're allowed to mourn anything for 24 hours, and that's it. That's it. It's pick up and recovery time. And so by the morning, I'd gotten over it, and I was in recovery mode. And he said, "Go over there," and I said, "All right." So I was there. So I was there for the table read, and they handed me the script. And they said, "We want him to sound the way the catalog, the J. Peterman catalog, is written." And for those who don't know what the J. Peterman catalog, it is one of a kind romantic ware that is described in a Hemingway style piece of prose with a size, a price, and an availability at the same time. So it's the craziest catalog you have ever seen in your life. But as Tom Hanks said to me once, he said, "This is the catalog that when it comes to the house, I throw it on the bedstand, and at night I read it cover to cover to my wife, Rita." And it's like, because it's just bizarre, the fact that everything is halfway through a conversation about enjoying a Pinot Noir on the steps of the Tour de Fel. It's like it's unbelievable in its uniqueness. So anyway, that was the catalog, and that was what they wanted. And I said, the character sounds a little bit like a 40s radio drama and a bit of a bad Charles Perrault. And so that's where the pump, that kind of bombastic, that sense of pomposity.
I love the way you described Peterman as a corporate Mr. Magoo, if I have it right.
He was, yeah.
And a legend in his own mind.
What he was, he was.
That was it's so perfect, right?
It was, it's like, and there was, and the nice thing about the character, what was so fun about him, is that it gave the writers, because Seinfeld was they had the permission to be extraordinarily different. So they would write these long running monologues that had absolutely no attachment to reality for Peterman. And, it's like, oh my God, he's off again. And you couldn't stop him because he was in the middle of some trip. It's like, I'll give you one of them, which you'll enjoy for a second here. It's in the Friars Club episode when Rob Schneider was playing my hard of hearing assistant, and I gave Elaine some advice that she certainly didn't need, because I mistakenly thought that she was having an affair with a guy named Rob Schneider. And so I walk into her office trying to play Cupid. I slap down 2 tickets to the Karamazov Brothers Circus, and I tell her that she and Bob can knock off a little early to get ready. Now she looks at me as though I had grown a second head, and she said, "Bob?" And I said, "Elaine, don't worry. I too am no stranger to love on the clock. As a young lad, my father apprenticed me to a honey factory in Paris. The chief beekeeper was this horrible hag of a woman with gnarled teeth and a giant wart that she called a nose. Whoo, she was not attractive, even by backward standards. But love is truly blind, Elaine, and as the days went on, working closer and closer together, that sweet smell of honey in the air, I knew I had to have that horrible creature. And I did. So you and Bob have a good time tonight.
Lovely. Thanks for sharing that. That's so awesome.
But that's, an example of the writing that you just can't replace anywhere else on television. I mean, you couldn't do that anywhere.
No, it's really, I don't want to say it's a gone thing, but it's missing. It's definitely missing. Let's jump into the game show a little bit, and then we're going to finish up on some technology and some things you got going on right now, which I'm obviously very excited to talk to you about. So you succeeded Richard Karn, who we've actually had on the show. Incredible stories for him as well on Family Feud. But one of the things, you ran 4 seasons on that show. And I want to read this because I happen to know you on the charitable level and the other level, but I call this a departure of integrity. Because when I read this, I actually thought, wow, this doesn't surprise me. I didn't know it. And if I have this right, it was no longer becoming family. It was becoming more about how overt you can be. And you said, that's not what I want. That's not what I do. So I had my time with it, and it was fun while I did it. But I'll leave that to someone who's more comfortable. That, to me, is so much integrity, not just in industry, but as a human being. It's like, wow. That's all I can say. Just wow.
Well, the show, it became a penis joke, and that's where it is right now. I mean, that's what it is. It's not. And if I talk to people now that bring up Family Feud, they all say we can't watch it anymore with our kids because it's just too offensive. It's not a family show anymore, which is what it always was meant to be. And if there was an innuendo, it was so deeply, richly enveloped. That you wouldn't really, I mean, a child wouldn't pick it up, but now it's pretty overt.
Right.
It just was not my stuff. I was getting too many letters from people saying this is not, we can't watch this anymore. And who do they blame? The host.
Right. Of course they do. Yeah. Of course they do. Yeah. So you've got a history of being a successful entrepreneur, a philanthropist. Just real quickly, what's the driving force behind the philanthropy? Just as I've witnessed in raising money and the things that you do?
Well, I'll begin with the thing that is most important to me, and that is that I lost my sister back when I was 16 years old, and she was 17 to epilepsy. And I kind of vowed to myself that if anything ever happened to me, that I would champion that, because it's a neurological disorder, and so little is being done with it. Although they've made extraordinary advancements, as many syndromes and diseases have, but it's so far down the line. And so I became national spokesman for epilepsy, and have done everything I possibly can to raise not only awareness, but to raise as much money as I can every year. I'm the largest fundraiser for epilepsy now, with the big tournament that I do out in Las Vegas towards the end of October every year. But it's important to me to keep the good spirit of my sister's legacy alive, and then beyond that, I am involved a great deal in children's charities, because obviously God has blessed me with I have a 15-year-old boy who's, if there's a perfect child, that's this child. And so children's charities are extraordinarily important to me. I host a tournament up in Sonoma County in the wine country, where we raise the money for the operating of 6 of the children's charities up there. And then I have another one that I do with Child Help, which is the largest child advocate against child abuse all across the country. And I help them raise upwards of about 10 million a year for that. And I also champion their cause up, and I do all the speaking for them up on Capitol Hill, and trying to make sure the funds are there every year for the suicide, or not the suicide, but for the Child Help hotline. It's the only one of its kind anywhere in the world. So,
Right.
yeah. So it's anyway. All of my charities are basically children oriented, and they feel good. I know I'm fulfilling a cause that I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, at the root of it, it's wonderful. I share your passion with that, as you know, and I've actually got to probably know you better just in helping raise a lot of money, just positioning the blessings and the donations and product, all that stuff. But let's talk about technology, because you got some exciting things going on. And then I'm going to let you kind of take us through that and what we can expect from John O'Hurley coming up. Probably very soon, I imagine.
Yes, it is. It's coming very soon. However, not soon enough, because, it's like you say, I'm an overnight success. Oh, about 12 years later. I believe in great ideas, and over the years, I've bought some great ideas, and I've sold some great ideas, and I've done very well with them, and I've been very fortunate. There's one particular one that is particularly important to me right now. And I own a technology that takes any form of waste and turns it into large amounts of energy with absolute zero emissions. So basically processing waste and turning it into energy, liquid or electricity, with absolute zero emissions. And that's never been done before anywhere in the world. So what I'm doing basically is zeroing out the need for landfills, for sewage treatment plants. I'm able to take all of the stuff that we don't want, the tires, used tires, all of the agricultural manure, the hog waste, the cow waste, the turkey, chicken, all that stuff, and turn it into usable energy, and large amounts of it, with all other byproducts as well that are recyclable. So it's a closed loop system. But even more importantly, the technology powers itself, so it's entirely off the grid. So let's use an example. We've had a terrible problem with forest fires in California over the last several years, and it's because we don't trim and we don't weed our forests. We let the stuff lie on the ground there, and then
It's
lightning will hit it. So what we can do because of our technology is take all of that stuff, run it through our system, grind it up, process it through the system, turn it into large amounts of energy, and take all the stuff off the forest floors in Northern California. It'd be an enormous help. Now, that's just one example. Another example is we can do coal using our technology with absolute zero emissions. Now think about that. Coal is no longer allowed in this country because it's considered a dirty fuel. It's just done incorrectly. With our technology, it's absolute zero emissions. And we can produce, with the condensation, because of the heat that we process the coal with, we can turn that condensation into 1 million gallons. If we do 100 tons of coal a day, we can do 1 million gallons of medical grade fresh water just as condensation off of that. So we're producing energy, we are producing medical grade water, and we're off the grid. Now, who can say no to that?
Are you in the marketplace right now?
We are in the market. We're a private company. This is my company, and I ain't giving it up. But it's we have a large contract with Butterball Turkey that's coming up very shortly. They will be the first one to use it in an industrial large scale process. We'll be taking all of the turkey manure and all of the renderings and everything, turning it into large amounts of energy for them to use. They also will be using the medical grade hot water, and this will be an extraordinary thing for them because the agricultural companies face large EPA resistance because hog farms are the #1 polluters in the world, chicken farms are the smelliest, and turkey farms and all of, right on down the line. We can manage all of that stuff using this technology with no emissions, turning it into large amounts of energy, which we sorely need. And the fact that it powers itself means that it's, as I say, you can't say no to it. It's an island technology. I have the island of Malta, which is a little large island off the coast of Italy right now, which right now is approaching us to do all of their waste. You can imagine how many islands there are in the Caribbean they have nowhere to put their waste. They have to put it on barges and send it to places where they offload it at an enormous expense to them, and all it does is just fill up a landfill. Well, we're better than
technology
that.
will be at point of experience where it's actually happening. Because I've actually been down in Bentonville, Arkansas. I've seen those chicken farms, and that is such an important process that people need, and it's exciting that you've.
Yeah, this will be, but there are so many things. I mean, just think about it. All of our municipal sewage treatment plants, we can take care of all of them. We don't need those sewage treatment plants anymore. We can turn all of our human waste into large amounts of energy. Nobody's ever thought of that before.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it is. It's not dinner table conversation, but I'll tell you, it's probably one of the most important things that we haven't done yet in our surge of technology. We've never gone back to think about, how about all the waste that we're leaving behind? We always think about technology as a proactive thing, and I can hold up a cell phone and say, look what we've done over our experience on this earth. What we haven't done is really trail all of the waste that we have left behind us that produce that one phone. You know, that you would probably fill a big room with all of the waste that produced one cell phone. All of the cardboard, the plastics, the everything, the styrofoam, all of the stuff,
Right.
the transistors, all not to mention all of the energy and fuel that was used to go and produce that stuff. We don't even address that. We leave a trail of waste behind for every technological advance that is absolutely abysmal, and we've never done anything about it. And that's why we have 7 swirls of vortexes in our 7 oceans that are so full of plastic that you can't even drive you can't even send a ocean liner through them.
What a great piece of technology to be able to be not only be a part of, but be responsible for. And what a huge effect. I mean,
it's going to have.
I've heard you talk about it before.
It's going to be culture changing, and it's meant to be culture changing. But again, it's all forms of waste, zero energy, and self-powering. So it's the flux capacitor finally from Back to the Future.
Oh, there you go.
Put to a large and much more helpful means.
So, what do you got coming up for John O'Hurley other than the technology, and that everybody can go watch and see? And
well, I still have my one-man show, which is called A Man with Standards. I tour that around the country. It's the stories of me growing up in the 50s and the 60s, surrounded by the music from the Great American Songbook, Sinatra, Mancini, all of that stuff. It's very funny. It's wonderful music. It's very funny, and only one tear. And I tour that around the country. I'll be doing that a bunch this summer. I'll be down in San Antonio in early August. I'll be in Southern Rhode Island in early August, and all around. I love doing it.
Can people go to a website and find out where you're at, or is it event promoted?
It's event promoted, yeah.
Okay, got it. You have, I don't know if you can talk about it or you can't talk about it. You kind of teased me a little bit about it, but you have kind of a pretty cool podcast yourself maybe coming up. Can you?
Oh, I do. Yeah, we just
talk about that a little bit, and we'll kind of.
Sure. I'm going to be doing the first Seinfeld podcast. I'll be hosting it. It's going to be called the Perterman Chronicles, and we're going to go episode by episode as kind of a rewatch. I'm going to be inviting some of the guest stars back on from the shows to recall some of their memories. And what I'm interested in are not some of the big popular guest stars that we've had, although because they've done other things. What I like, because Seinfeld had smaller guest stars, people just doing 1 or 2 lines, and I want to have them on the podcast, and I want to see where they are 30 years from now and how Seinfeld has impacted their lives. Because it's so much fun. When you're on a show like that it just keeps running and running and running, and it's in 85 countries. And I remember going to Botswana to do a National Geographic commercial, or not host a show there. And the guide that I had in Botswana said, "Oh, Mr. Perterman." And I'm going, can you believe I'm on the other side of the world and somebody knows my name who is a guide in the middle of the Okavango Delta? I said, it's so to me, the beauty of this podcast will be the fact that we can go back and talk about some of the small memories of the show and stuff. I just did a funny thing the other night. I did a reading for a fundraiser with Jack Black and Seth Rogen, and we read through with a few other people the 2 episodes of Seinfeld, The Contest, and another one. Well, it doesn't matter, but we read The Contest and another one, and it was hysterical how those, even in the hands of other people, that the scripts still hold up. And people were laughing hysterically just at the reading of the scripts as a fundraiser.
It's
and
fun.
We filled an entire theater, and it was just we had such a good time. And I narrated it, and Jack Black played Kramer, and
so will that be out this fall then? Will that podcast?
No, we didn't. No, this was a one-time only. It was live.
Oh, okay.
It was a live.
No, that one, but I'm saying the actual one that you're going to be doing, is that going to come up?
Or the podcast. Yes, we'll be doing it. Yeah, that will be out this.
Okay. All right.
We'll be recording all summer, and it should be fun. It should be a lot of fun.
Well, I want to thank you, my friend. This has been a pure joy. You've been generous with your time. It's fantastic, and we will look forward to you changing the world. It sounds like with.
I hope so.
Cultural technology. Thank you so much, man.
Bless you. Take care. Bye-bye now.